Hey there.
Yeah.
You ever get the feeling like some people are just like tuned into something the rest of us aren't?
Yeah.
It's like they're seeing the world through a different lens.
Absolutely.
Well, today we're diving deep into the world of the male INFP, a personality type that often fits that description.
I think it's a fascinating one to explore, especially because there's so many misconceptions, especially when it comes to men,
Yeah,
about
totally.
what it means to be an INFP.
Yeah, and you've given us some amazing stuff to dig into. Personal stories about friends of yours who fit the profile. There's articles about INFP traits,
Right.
and even some FAQs that highlight like common questions and misunderstandings. So you already know the basics.
Mm.
INFPs, creative, empathetic, deep well of emotions.
Hmm.
But today, we're going beyond that surface level and to
Right.
try to figure out what really makes these guys tick.
What's interesting is that for all of the quietness INFP men can have, there's often like a hidden depth and intensity there.
Yeah, for sure. And that was one of the first things that really stood out to me when I was going through all this stuff you sent. This idea that they can be like mistaken for being passive or even feminine just because they're not the loudest people in the room.
Right.
But then, I mean, you shared that story about your friend who stood up for his beliefs
Hmm.
even when everyone else disagreed.
Yeah.
So it's like quietness doesn't necessarily equal submissiveness
Hmm.
in the INFP world.
Absolutely not. No. And that's it's actually a really important piece to understanding them.
Okay.
And it comes down to these cognitive functions, basically how they process information
Right.
and make decisions. Their dominant function is phi,
Okay.
or introverted feeling, which acts like it's like an inner compass guiding their
Okay.
actions and beliefs.
So it's not that they're afraid to speak up.
Hmm.
It's more like they're choosing their battles
Right.
based on what really matters to them deep down.
Absolutely, yeah. And that brings us to their auxiliary function, Fey, or extroverted feeling.
Mhm.
So this is where their sensitivity to other people's emotions comes in.
Okay.
They care about harmony.
Right.
They want to create a positive atmosphere,
Yeah,
but their primary drive is always that internal compass.
I see. Okay, so going back to your friend who, was quiet but defended his beliefs,
Hmm.
that's phi in action.
Right.
Right. It's that inner compass.
Exactly.
But his sensitivity to others, wanting to maintain that harmony, that's fey.
Exactly.
So it's like this balancing act.
Yeah, it is. It's a delicate balancing act that they're constantly kind of navigating.
Right. And maybe that explains why, like, we were talking about how they can seem reserved around strangers, but
Mhm.
totally different with close friends. It's like
Mhm.
their social energy is very selective.
Very much so. You
Yeah.
mentioned a friend who's like the life of the party.
Yeah, a total opposite.
Yeah, but only around his close circle. Practically silent with people he doesn't know. So what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, what's that all about?
Classic cognitive introvert behavior. Social interaction. It can be draining, especially for INFPs,
Right.
especially with people they don't really know that well. They recharge through solitude, through introspection. But when they feel safe
Yeah.
and understood, where they can be themselves,
Hmm.
they can be so engaging,
Right.
even lively.
It's like they're saving their energy for those, like, real conversations.
Right.
For the people that really matter to them. So it's not that they're antisocial, it's just they're choosy.
Exactly. Yeah. And that ties into another like key aspect of the INFP personality, their need for authenticity. They crave genuine connection
Right.
and really dislike superficial interactions, so they're more likely to come alive, as you were saying, when they can express their true selves
Hmm.
without being judged.
So it's not that they can't be social.
Hmm.
It's that they're very deliberate about where they, put their energy.
Exactly, yeah. Now, another theme that came up a lot in the stuff that you sent me was this emotional landscape of INFP men.
Okay.
They're often described as deeply sensitive, but also remarkably in control.
Right. And that there's that, like, sensitive artist stereotype
Yeah,
that can sometimes be associated with INFPs.
for sure.
And one anecdote that you shared that really stuck with me was about a friend of yours who had incredible control over his emotions, even in like really tough situations.
Yeah.
It's almost like he had this inner reservoir of strength
Mm-hmm.
that allowed him to stay calm amidst all the chaos.
Yeah, and that inner strength often comes from their phi, that internal value system that we were talking about. It's like
Wow.
a source of grounding for them and stability,
Gotcha.
even when things are emotionally intense. And remember, they primarily process things internally, so they kind of have this rich inner world
Right.
where their feelings are explored and understood. before they express them outwardly.
And that might explain why they can be, so sensitive to criticism. If you're processing everything so deeply on the inside, external negativity can feel way more intense.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to approach INFPs with a lot of sensitivity.
Yeah?
Understanding, because they have this incredible inner strength, but they're also, very in tune with the atmosphere, the emotional atmosphere around them.
It's like they have this emotional radar,
Yeah.
constantly picking up on cues that other people miss.
Right.
And that can be a gift and a challenge, I guess, depending.
Yeah, absolutely, it can. But let's not forget about all those amazing strengths. I mean, the stuff you sent me was like full of positive attributes associated with them, creativity,
Yeah.
strong morals, empathy, loyalty.
It's like a checklist for being a great person.
Yeah.
And I love that it's not like just vague, feel-good qualities.
Right.
You gave some really great examples of how these actually manifest in real life.
Their creativity often leads to really innovative problem solving, thinking outside the box. Their strong sense of morals means that they're willing to stand up for what they believe in, even when it's not popular. And their empathy allows them to form deep, meaningful connections and provide unwavering support to people they love.
It's like they have this innate ability to see the beauty and the potential both in people and in ideas.
Exactly. But like with any personality type, there are flip sides.
Right.
To these strengths. Their sensitivity, while it leads to all this great empathy, can also lead to taking things too personally.
Yeah.
Their desire for harmony can make them conflict avoidant, which isn't always, the best approach. And their tendency towards perfectionism can make them doubt themselves and procrastinate.
Yeah, that reminds me of the story about your friend
Yeah.
who had trouble differentiating between intention and action.
Oh, right.
Like he had all these amazing ideas and goals,
Yeah.
but struggled to actually put them into practice. And you said that this might have something to do with say or extroverted sensing, which is like how we interact with the physical world.
It's a really common challenge for INFPs. They're visionaries at heart, but the practicalities of the world can feel really overwhelming to them or even frustrating. Their strength is in their internal world, ideas and emotions. And bridging that gap to action takes a lot of effort.
It's like they've got this beautiful tapestry woven in their minds, but they need help bringing it to life in the real world,
Yeah,
which is where supportive friends and family come in.
exactly. Speaking of relationships, your stories painted a pretty heartwarming picture of INFP men as partners.
Yep.
Words like romantic, devoted, and deeply connected kept coming up over and over.
Yeah, I love that story about your friend who just felt so valued just for sharing his thoughts and feelings.
Right.
And then there's that other story about how your INFP friend made someone feel so wanted and accepted just for being themselves.
And that says so much about the kind of connection INFPs look for. They really crave that authenticity and depth in their relationships. They prioritize emotional intimacy way more than casual things, superficial interactions. For them, it's about finding someone who truly sees them and appreciates that inner world, all that complexity. And in return, they offer a level of loyalty and devotion that's pretty hard to find.
So it's not about playing games or anything. It's about finding a partner who understands and appreciates their way of seeing the world.
Exactly. Now, one more interesting observation that I noticed from all the stuff you sent me is about INFPs and extroversion.
Right.
Because some people just assume that, all INFPs are shy and withdrawn. But that's not always the case.
Yeah. No, I noticed that too. Some of your sources mentioned that INFP men can have a strong fee, which makes them seem more outgoing than the typical stereotype.
Yeah.
You even mentioned a friend who's a healthy INFP 7W6. What does that even mean?
It's a way of acknowledging the nuance within personality typing. The Enneagram, which uses numbers to describe personality patterns, can add another layer.
Oh, okay.
In this case, a 7-wing 6 suggests someone who embodies the core INFP traits, but also has that, more extroverted, enthusiastic energy.
Right. He's a great example of how you can't just put people in a box.
Yeah, absolutely.
Based on 4 letters.
Right.
He's got that INFP depth, that sensitivity, but he brings a lot of energy and enthusiasm too.
And that's a crucial reminder that, personality typing is a framework, not a set of rules.
Right.
There's always room for individual nuance,
Right.
expression within each type. And that's what makes it so fascinating to explore, right?
Yeah.
Peeling back the layers of the onion discovering hidden depths and complexities with each new piece of information.
Totally. It's amazing how much depth we've uncovered about male INFPs already, but I'm curious, how do all these traits actually play out in their lives? Like when it comes to careers, creative pursuits, their impact on the world?
It's a great question. It's one thing to understand, like, the theory, but another to see it in action.
Right, like we know INFPs are often drawn to creative fields,
Hmm.
but like, what does that actually look like? Is it the stereotypical, like, starving artist? Or are there other less obvious paths that resonate with them more?
If we connect it to the bigger picture, remember their dominant function, phi, that internal compass.
Right.
It makes sense that their career choices are deeply connected to their values. They're
Right.
not just looking for a job.
Hmm.
They're searching for a vocation that aligns with their purpose
Right.
and lets them make a meaningful contribution.
Okay, so it's not just about the creative expression. It's
Mhm.
about finding something that feels authentic
Good.
to who they are.
Yeah, that's why you often find INFP men drawn to fields like social work or counseling or teaching, even activism.
Yeah.
They have this strong desire to help others, to make a positive difference in the world, and they're willing to dedicate their lives to causes that they really believe in.
Fascinating. So it's not just about being creative.
Right.
It's about, like, aligning that creativity with their values
Absolutely.
and using it to make a real impact.
Exactly. And their phi isn't just about their personal values.
Mhm.
It's about authenticity, too.
Right.
They need to be true to themselves to express their individuality,
Right.
which can definitely show up in their creative pursuits as well.
Okay, so like some INFP might be drawn to like traditional artistic fields like writing, music,
Right.
visual arts, but others might find their creative outlet in other ways.
For sure, absolutely. Some might find fulfillment building a business that aligns with their values, or they might channel their creativity into, hobbies or side projects.
Yeah.
It's really about finding a way to bring their inner world to life in a way that feels meaningful to them.
That makes me think about the anecdote you shared about your friend who's actually quite successful in business.
Right, yeah.
It challenges that stereotype
Mm.
of the purely artistic, dreamy INFP.
Exactly. He's a great example of how INFPs can be incredibly adaptable
Mm.
and resourceful,
Yeah.
even in fields that might not seem like a natural fit at first glance.
Right.
Their creativity, empathy, and values
Yeah.
can be assets in a bunch of different things.
It's like they have this drive to find their own unique path,
Hmm.
one that lets them express their creativity and make an impact in a way that, like, feels right.
Exactly. And this brings us to their relationship with the outer world.
Wow.
We've talked about how, they're introverts, they recharge through solitude,
Right.
but they're not hermits
Yeah.
hiding from society.
Yeah.
They care deeply about the world, even if they engage with it in a, more selective way.
Right. It's not about withdrawing from the world. It's
Yeah.
about, like, finding their own way to make a contribution.
Right.
And sometimes that means working behind the scenes, using their creativity and their empathy in a quieter way.
And what's fascinating is how this dynamic can play out in their relationships. We've talked about, INFP men as partners, romantic, devoted, all of that.
Right.
But this goes beyond just romantic love, too.
Yeah.
This loyalty extends to their friendships, their families,
Yeah.
their communities even.
Hmm. One of the anecdotes that stood out was about your INFP friend who was just so incredibly loyal to his friends,
Right.
always there for them.
That's classic INFP behavior.
Yeah.
They're very invested in the people they care about. The
Yeah.
kind of friends who will, show up for you no matter what.
Yeah.
They might not be the life of the party, but they're the ones you can count on when it really matters.
Mm-hmm. They're the keepers of secrets.
Yeah.
The shoulder to cry on, the champion of your dreams.
Yeah, and they do it all with this, quiet strength
Mm.
that's incredibly endearing.
Yeah. But let's not forget about their potential challenges, too.
Right. Yeah.
Their sensitivity can also make them vulnerable,
Mm.
and their desire for harmony can lead to, like, conflict avoidance.
Which isn't always the best approach.
It's like they're walking this tightrope
Mhm.
between peace and their values.
Yeah, and those two things can be at odds sometimes.
For sure.
Especially in a world that can be, so harsh.
That's why self-awareness is so important for INFP men.
Right.
Understanding their strengths and weaknesses
Mm-hmm.
allows them to navigate the world with more grace.
Right. And finding healthy ways to, express their emotions.
Absolutely.
Whether it's through, creative outlets, conversations, even just spending time in nature.
Yeah, nurturing their sensitive souls,
Yeah.
but also, giving them the tools to deal with a world that doesn't always understand them.
It's interesting. We've been talking about the INFP male experience, but a lot of what we've talked about applies to all INFPs,
That's a great point.
regardless of gender, right?
Yeah, it speaks to the fact that while gender influences how those traits show up, the core essence of the INFP remains the same. Yeah, it's like there's this universal INFP spirit, this shared desire for connection and meaning
Right.
that goes beyond societal expectations.
Exactly. And that's what makes them so enriching to explore.
Yeah.
It allows us to connect with that shared humanity,
Right.
regardless of our differences.
Okay, so we've talked about their strengths, their challenges, their careers, relationships.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about their quirks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are some of those uniquely INFP things that make them so endearing, even if they're a bit confusing sometimes?
Yeah. Yes, the quirks. One thing that comes up a lot is their tendency to overthink.
Oh, yeah.
That introspective nature combined with their rich inner world can lead to these, endless loops of analysis.
The masters of the mental rabbit hole.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you start talking about the weather,
Right.
and suddenly you're dissecting the meaning of raindrops.
Exactly. And while that can be really stimulating for some people, it can also be, a bit exhausting for others
Yeah.
who prefer, just lighter conversations. It's like their minds are always searching for deeper meaning in everything,
Yeah.
which can be a blessing and a curse,
Totally.
depending on the situation.
Another quirk that comes up is their tendency to be idealistic.
Oh.
They have a very clear vision for how the world could be and can be disappointed by the gap between their ideals and reality.
Right. That reminds me of the story about your friend.
Yep.
He struggled to separate intention from action. He had all these amazing ideas and goals, but, reality got in the way.
Yeah.
That's a classic INFP struggle.
Yeah.
They see the potential for good in everything.
Yeah.
They can be heartbroken when that potential isn't met.
It's like they're carrying this torch of hope
Yeah.
and inspiration, and they can get burned when they encounter cynicism and negativity.
And yet they never lose that spark. They continue to believe in kindness and empathy and creativity
Yeah.
to make a difference.
It's beautiful, really.
It's a quality that's both inspiring and humbling. A reminder that, even in a world that can be cynical,
Yeah.
there are still people who hold on to hope,
Right.
who believe in the good.
Okay, I'm feeling all warm and fuzzy inside.
Yeah.
But let's bring it back to male INFPs.
Right.
We've covered a lot. Anything else we should touch on?
Let's see. We talked about their strengths, challenges, their relationships, quirks. Oh, yes. There's one more thing we haven't fully explored. Their sense of humor.
Their humor. Yeah. That's one of those things that can surprise people.
It can.
You wouldn't expect a quiet, introspective type to be funny,
Right.
but they often have this very dry wit.
Exactly. It's not always laugh out loud jokes.
Right.
More subtle, observational,
Yeah.
with a bit of irony and self-deprecation.
And sometimes it's just silly.
Like you told that story about your friend who would come up with these ridiculous scenarios
Oh, yeah.
and have everyone cracking up.
That's another hallmark of their humor.
Yeah.
Playful imagination.
Right.
Embracing the absurd.
It's like they have this secret stash of whimsical humor that they only share with people they really trust.
Exactly.
It's like a glimpse into their, more playful, childlike side. It's a reminder that even the most introspective souls
Right.
have this capacity for lightheartedness.
It's like they're saying, hey, life is serious enough.
Yeah.
Let's not forget to have some fun.
Yeah. And their humor is often a way to connect and create this shared joy.
Beautifully put.
Yeah,
Their humor is truly a gift,
it is.
both to themselves
Right.
and to those around
It's
them.
like a secret handshake.
Yeah.
Like, I get you, you get me. Let's embrace this whole thing together.
Indeed. And that brings us to the end of this part of our deep dive.
I hope you're feeling as enriched and enlightened as I am.
Yeah.
But don't go anywhere yet. We still have one more segment to go.
Okay.
And I have a feeling it's going to be the most insightful one yet.
All right. We're back for the final part of our deep dive into the male INFP personality. Feels like we've uncovered so much already.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating journey.
But I have a feeling there's still more to explore.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. One of the things that's really struck me is this idea of individuality within, like, the whole personality typing framework.
Yeah.
Like, it's easy to think, oh, all INFPs are like this.
Right.
But your sources have shown us that that's just not the case.
Yeah, it's like looking at a forest. You know, all the trees might share certain characteristics, but each one is unique in its own way.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of that study you shared about INFP men and career paths.
Right.
There was such a wide range of professions there, from artists to writers to like scientists and entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that there's no one right way to express the INFP personality.
And it all comes back to that INFP drive,
Yeah.
that search for authenticity and meaning.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just, looking for a job.
Right.
They're looking for a calling.
Right, that resonates with who they are.
Exactly. Something that lets them, use their gifts and make a difference.
So we might see patterns.
Right.
But it's important to remember that each person is on their own journey.
Absolutely.
Their experiences, their background, their values, all of these things shape like how their INFP traits, come out.
And that's what makes it so fascinating.
Yeah.
They're always evolving, growing,
Right.
redefining what it means to be an INFP.
So we've talked about the strengths, the challenges, but as we wrap up, what does it all mean? What's the bigger picture takeaway about INFP men and their place in the world?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think the answer lies in their perspective. INFP men often just see the world differently. They're tuned into a different frequency, you could say. They're more sensitive to nuances, to emotions, and they often see possibilities that others might miss.
It's like they have this special lens
Yeah.
that allows them to see things in this more vibrant way.
Exactly. And while that can lead to challenges,
Right.
overthinking,
Yeah.
taking things personally,
Yeah, those sensitivity.
feeling overwhelmed by the world, it can also be a real strength.
It's like they're holding up this mirror to society,
Yeah.
reflecting back our hopes for a better world
Right.
and our capacity for compassion.
Absolutely.
And in a world that feels more and more cynical and materialistic,
Yeah.
that's a really valuable perspective.
Their sensitivity, their empathy, their idealism, those are superpowers
Yeah.
that have the potential to heal and inspire
Yeah, it's true.
and create change.
So they're not just dreamers or idealists. They're agents of change,
yes.
pushing for a more compassionate world.
And even though they might not always fit in or
Right.
feel understood, their perspective and
Yeah.
their commitment to their values
Yeah,
make them so important
it's true.
to the human experience.
I think that's a great point to end on.
Yeah.
To our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of the male INFP.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you learned something and gained a new appreciation for this really, really valuable personality type.
Absolutely.
And remember, this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep embracing the beauty of human complexity.